I'm talking to one of my favorite people today, Andrew Wilder, the founder and CEO of NerdPress. So in episode 5, when I talked to Amber Stott, and episode 16 with Melissa Lands, I talked about that fateful day in Los Angeles when I attended that food blogging conference and met some really key people in my life, and Andrew was one of them. And there are a lot of reasons why I love Andrew, namely his commitment to excellence, his kindness, and his integrity. And I've watched Andrew go through a number of iterations of things that he's good at in order to find his it has to be me, the thing that he's really passionate about. And his story is such a testament to just showing up. That's his philosophy. Showing up and collaborating with others. And when you show up with your truth and your integrity, extraordinary things happen and incredible people come into your life. So I can't wait to dive inside his story with you. So let's get the skinny from Andrew Wilder.
Welcome. I am here today with my dear friend and tech genius, Andrew Wilder, who is the founder and CEO of NerdPress. They're the most amazing collaborative team that provide tech solutions, tech support, optimization, and maintenance for people, entrepreneurs, businesses who want to feel safe and thrive online in their businesses. Andrew and his team run all of my websites. And I have to say, on a personal level, I have never worked with a team who offers better customer service. You really feel like you're part of a family and you're really taken care of. So running websites is stressful. And there's so many things that you need to be thinking about. And the rules just change constantly. And I don't want to have to think about that. And that's why I engage Andrew and his team and will for the rest of my life. So Andrew, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. And you can be my spokesperson anytime.
Oh, you know, I'm always up for it. I give great testimonials when I really, really believe in something, and I really believe in this. But you've got such an interesting story. So we're going to kind of talk about a lot of things today, because the way that Andrew makes decisions and the way that he has developed his core values with his team and trying a lot of different things in his life to get to the thing that he's the most passionate about and will continue to be passionate about, I think is really teachable for all of us, right? Which is why I asked him to join us today. So Andrew, can we start with what your dad taught you about going down different paths? Because you've shared that with me on a number of occasions, and I think it's such a beautiful thing to teach people.
I mean, my dad just encouraged me to try stuff. And he would basically say, there's always going to be a bunch of paths in front of you, and you should try going down them and see what sticks and see what you like. So not rocket science, but it was very helpful to have him encourage me. And he'd sometimes have to goad me, but it was, walking down a path isn't a huge commitment. It sometimes feels like it is, but it isn't.
And you can always change your mind,
Exactly.
right? So the value of having parents, or a parent who encourages you to do that is so valuable. My parents also encouraged me to do that as well. And you've tried a lot of different things. You really took that advice and you ran with it, and sometimes had to be pushed, and that's fine. So let's start with you getting interested in theatre and what that taught you as a high school kid, and then studying theatre in college. We're both theatre animals,
Right.
theatre majors. You went to Northwestern, I went to UCLA. You've told me before about that feeling like the first place where you belonged. Tell me about the value of that.
Yeah, I mean, I was a super nerdy kid in high school. High school sucks for everybody, right? It just does. Everybody, it's just painful. But I found my community in theater. I started doing sound design, and building sets, and then moved into lighting design. And it was my place. It was my safe space. And I loved the people there, and they valued me. I valued them. And it was just very comfortable. So, it's pretty much the typical high school theater kid story is like, oh, that's where they fit in. So.
Yeah. And being lost in stories too, and being able to talk about story and, feeling like you've found your people. Yeah. It's just so important. I think everybody's got one of those stories in high school, right? Hopefully. But then you went on to studying in college. So what did you learn there? What did you continue to learn about the value of where you fit in, or how did it start to help you sort of form your identity?
So I between my junior and senior year in high school, I went to an amazing summer program at Northwestern called the National High School Institute. It was lovingly called the Cherub program, but it was a 5-week theater intensive training program, and it's like all rising high school seniors. So we're all 17 or so, right? And it was like life-changing, amazing, a year's worth of living in 5 weeks kind of program. And I fell in love with the campus and the school. And it's the best recruiting tool Northwestern has also. Right?
Oh, but I mean, it's such an incredible school.
Oh, and so my senior year, when I'm trying to figure out where to go to college, I didn't know what else to do besides theater, frankly. I was like, I don't know. And so I'm like, well, let's go pursue this. And so I never did any stage performance acting. I was a horrible actor. I was always behind the scenes or up in the booth. So I basically went.
But actors, we need you. We need you, people. You make us look good.
That's the goal. Got to have good lighting. So I went to college for theater undergrad, and since I was in the tech program, I had a lot of opportunity there. The student theater program at Northwestern is amazing, and a lot of it is you have to make it what you want. I did a lot of graduate level courses because they have a graduate design program, but not an undergraduate design program. So I was just sort of doing the generic theater program, but then taking graduate classes. So I'm like sitting doing work next to graduate students and just getting almost a graduate level education. And so I loved it. It was great. And
this is when you started working on websites, right?
So I was, my first website I built was in 1998. And I think it was my senior year in college, and we needed a website for a conference we were doing. So I built this website. So that's where I got into it. I'd always been into computers ever since I took a logo programming class as a kid. I'm totally dating myself now, but there was a computer program that had a thing called the turtle, which is just a triangle, and you gave it instructions and you could make it draw a circle. If you're really good, you could get cool shapes. Again, that was my parents encouraging me to try stuff, right? So I've always been into computers and tech, and lighting is also a very technical art form. You're programming computers to do the lighting stuff now.
This is why I'm never lighting anybody, even with their smartphone. It's not happening. My brain just doesn't work that way. So, I want to talk about this it has to be me moment, where I think part of the it has to be me is realizing what does not have to be me. Right. So talk us through that moment. You worked as a lighting designer in theater, on cruise ships, for live events for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So my first career was in lighting. So I finished college and started doing some website support work as a side gig, because if you're a new freelancer doing lighting, you have to pick up a whole bunch of work. So I started doing some work on an e-commerce website, and simultaneously I'm doing all this lighting work. I ended up getting involved working for Princess Cruises. So I would go out on the ships and set up shows. I started as an assistant, and then I started doing the designs, which was a lot of fun in my 20s and then started to be really hard in my 30s. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. You're working a lot of overnights, and sometimes you get a cool day in port, but usually we would be working when the ship was in port, and so we're in the Bahamas and we're in just a dark room working.
Yeah. So what was the I don't want to do this anymore moment? The does not have to be me moment.
So over time, I found myself not really liking the work, the actual day-to-day, what I do day in and day out. I didn't like the doing of it. I loved being the lighting designer. I loved the collaboration and working with people and sort of being in charge of that aspect. And I loved having done it, and being proud of the work, but I didn't like the actual doing. But that's what we do though, right? The idea is one thing, but the actual day-to-day is another. And while I was...
And you gotta love the day-to-day.
We are the sum of our days. And if we're miserable each day, we're going to be miserable. That's what I've learned. Right?
Yes.
And so I had sort of this pivotal moment where my best friend and business partner, who we had a lighting company together, he was working to design a Billy Joel concert at the Colosseum in Rome, the actual Billy Joel, right? He's running lights for Billy Joel. And I'm on a ship remounting a show called Piano Man for, I think, the 7th time, where I'm doing a cruise ship medley version of Billy Joel's songs. And it was literally the same week, and I'm just in my cabin sobbing at one point. I just didn't want to do it anymore, and it had never been that clear that I'm I have to get the hell out of this. It's time. Yeah.
Wow. So you listened to that. And then what brought you to this next part of your evolution where you started a food blog and started talking about healthy living and started your Eating Rules website?
So I had always been interested in healthy eating. When I was in high school, I was in the animal rights group and I was a vegetarian. And I kind of lost my way as I was working. I was eating at cruise ship buffets all the time and eating, lots of fried food. And so around the same time, I ended up out of a 3 or so year long relationship. And I was starting to date again. And I realized, hey, if I'm going to start dating, I need to get into better shape. And so
Oh, that's a good motivator.
I mean, right? It's this isn't. I'm not the first person to tell that story, right?
Gosh, no.
So I start eating better. I start exercising. I actually start running, I was the kid who would puke after we had to run in high school PE. And yeah, the first time I ran a mile without stopping, I actually involuntarily swore at my high school coach. It just came out of me. So some baggage there, maybe. So anyway, I got really into working out and being healthy and paying attention to what I was eating and how it affected my body. And I realized that I was passionate about it. And everybody always says, follow your passion and the money will come, right? It's really so woo-woo, but I think it is important to follow your passion and see if you can make the money come. And so I decided to become an expert in health and nutrition. And, I took a class or two, started reading up on it. And then I realized, okay, if I'm going to become an expert, how does someone this was 2009 when I'm figuring this out. How does someone become an expert? Well, okay, you can go to school and, study, get a graduate degree, pay $100,000 and spend 3 years of your life, or you can have an audience. And that's a little cynical, but
yeah, okay.
But we have a lot of experts, and if you have an audience, you're an expert, right? It's sort of a backwards way to go about it.
Depends on the perception, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does. And I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to commit, 3 more years to studying nutrition, and so I wasn't ready to go the grad school route. And so I'm like, okay, I'll start a blog, and that can be my grad school, and we'll see how that goes. And I just started researching and writing a ton, and I started publishing 7 days a week when I started it.
Yeah, you were prolific when I met you back in 2010. Yeah.
That quickly went to 6 days a week and then went to 5 days a week.
Yeah, right.
And blog posts.
Because you ended up not being as passionate about it. Going back to what you were saying about the day to day, we are the sum of our days.
Yes, I was really excited about it for several years, a good 4 or 5 years. And then it started to taper off for me. Early on also, a blog post could be a few paragraphs and that was it, right? This was before SEO. And I was writing, for me, I would want to learn about lipids and cholesterol. And I would write, a few paragraphs. I would research it, synthesize what I learned and put it into a blog post. So it was great education.
And now everyone's just using ChatGPT.
Well, which is probably wrong.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's the problem now, right? So what led you to start October on Process? So for those of you that listened to the first episode of the podcast with Amber Stott, I highly recommend listening to that episode. She talks about Andrew. This is the Andrew she's talking about, right? Where she said she was inspired to start Food Literacy Center because Andrew did October on Process. So for those of you listening, you just don't know who you're touching, right? So Andrew, she really credited you with being one of the main sources of inspiration for this extraordinary thing that's now changing the California food system. So thank you for that and the ripple effects of that.
I have goosebumps because I honestly did not know that until you told me that yesterday.
Oh, it's pretty amazing. So just to give you guys listening some background, we all met on the day, right? The day that I met Amber, I met Andrew, I met Annalise, I met Susie, we met so many of the people that we're still very dear friends with. It was a pretty incredible day that changed my life. Meeting Andrew being one of those big things. Why did you start October on Process?
So I just started my food blog, and I was a month or two in, and I saw an ad or somebody posted on Facebook something about the International Food Bloggers Conference up in Seattle. And I remember thinking, if I'm serious about this, I should probably go to a conference.
And meet people.
Right? And meet people. And I will say, just showing up is huge. like getting out of the house and going to a conference or going to the thing, whatever it is, right? Just being there, you never know what's going to happen. And it opens up so many doors.
Yes. I love that. Just show
show
up.
up.
You don't know what's going to
Yes.
happen. Yeah.
So I decided to go for it. I flew up to Seattle, not knowing anybody. Twitter was amazing then in 2010, right?
Yes.
We had like the fail whale. We overloaded Twitter. The conference was fantastic. It was like 100 food bloggers in the back of a chocolate factory, all of us in one room and just so excited to be there. And the energy was just nuts. And we were in a session on specialized diets, and there's somebody talking about gluten-free and somebody talking about vegan. And I don't know what struck me, but I just tweeted with the conference hashtag something like, "I'm thinking about making October a month of no processed food. Who wants to join me?" That's it.
Ooh, and you got an overwhelming response.
So many people responded, like they just hit reply. All the people in the room were like, I'm in. And I didn't know what to do. I literally had a pad and I started writing people's handles down. Like, I didn't know what I just started. But, there were a good 10 or 15 people easily, like within seconds, who just said, I'm game, let's try it. And
it just became huge and just inspired so many people. So thank you for that. And look, you really are such an incredible example of just responding, throwing it out there, asking people, getting the feedback and running with it and deciding you're going to be the solution. You're going to provide the solution. And again, going back to what your dad said, just go down that path, see where it's going to lead you. What are you going to learn about yourself? How can you contribute? Because I know contribution is something that really motivates you, injustice, wanting to make the world a better place. So let's talk about the blog tutor thing, because that was another example of, I know all of us food bloggers and online entrepreneurs freaking out about the tech aspect. And so everybody would be cornering you at all these events, asking you about this. And then you started speaking on panels, you started speaking on webinars, that, all of that sort of childhood experience, interest in coding, interest in tech, the lighting design, the building of the websites, all of this sort of stuff started to merge together, where you could merge a lot of your gifts and talents and interests in this one place. So you started helping bloggers. And in the beginning, it was a lot of food bloggers because that's where you were. Tell us about embracing that and kind of running with that.
So once again, it was one of those things where I showed up. I'm like, I'm going to try this, and something happens, right? Where there's this pivotal thing where suddenly it sends me down another path. And
the it has to be me moments.
So after that first conference, I got hooked on hanging out with food bloggers because it's such a great crew. So I was going to lots of conferences.
Because we're always eating.
I mean, usually there's good food, right? So I went to the Blogger Food Conference, and all these other conferences, and there was a Camp Blogaway up in the mountains, and I got involved with the Food Bloggers Los Angeles group, and they asked me to speak on Google Analytics, I think it was, and it was some Sunday afternoon in somebody's back porch, right? And I knew there wouldn't be a projector, so I printed up all these handouts for people so I could have screenshots and all this stuff. So I spent 2 hours going through Google Analytics with everybody. And afterwards, they swarmed me with all these tech questions. And someone was like, "Hey, will you help me with my site? What's your rate?" And I'm like, no, I'm not going to charge you. I'm happy to help you. It's all good. And they're like, "No, I insist. How much do you charge?" And it was I felt the light bulb go off or turn on right above my head, right? And I'm like, maybe there's something here that I should say yes to charging for. And it just started to grow from there. And I just started helping people with their sites and fixing their problems. And they would be like, "Hey, can you do a redesign?" Or "This thing is broken. Can you fix it?" And so I just got a bunch of great clients out of it, essentially.
Yeah, well, it grew very, very, very quickly, and you became the go-to person in the food blogging community for tech support. And let's talk about that transition. Okay, so we have to talk about when you and Ashley. So for those of you that listened to the last episode with Ashley Koff, Better Not Perfect, Ashley, Andrew, and myself, we are friends, and we all drove down to San Diego from Los Angeles, which is about a 3.5-hour drive, and we were all we all were sort of licking ourselves like cats because Andrew had one of the first Teslas in California. And we were driving down in our electric car having these great conversations. And so we sort of thought, we're going down to this Amy Porterfield business workshop and we're going to learn all this great stuff. And we're going to share this hotel room. Oh, gosh, it was a hilarious weekend. And we decided that we were going to make use of our time as we're driving there and back. That was 7 hours of productivity. And we're going to help each other with our businesses, right? Because 2 heads are better than 1, 3 heads are better than 2. Let's do this. And so let's talk about that drive on the way back from San Diego to Los Angeles, where we collectively rebranded Blog Tutor into NerdPress, right? And we will credit Ashley Koff with
Absolutely.
she named NerdPress. And we were spitballing back and forth, this name, that name. And you were going, well, I'm a nerd and I help with WordPress sites. And Ashley goes, NerdPress. And I mean, it was kind of amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
I originally called it Blog Tutor because I was going to build courses for people and I never built a single course, right? And so I had rebrand Blog Tutor on my to-do list for years and I just hadn't come up with a name and I'd struggled. I mean, I'd brainstormed and Ashley just like blurted it out on this car ride, and
after 3 hours of spitballing back and forth, right? So that was the process, right? And, there's value in that process of just going back and forth and coming up with a million things. And, I was in the front seat making notes. She was in the back seat. You were driving. Do you remember that? It was so great. And wow, so great that you were able to secure it because what a brilliant, brilliant name. Let's talk about this evolution from one-man band and creating this exhaustive full-time job to building this team of 24 people now. And it just continues to grow and grow and grow. I want to ask you about this movement from solopreneur to CEO.
Yeah. So
what has that been like for you?
So it wasn't that clear that that's what I was doing. I was just like, I got to hire help. That's where I was, right? And so it was 2017. I went to another conference called WordCamp. I'm big on conferences. Like meeting in person is just so good.
I love conferences.
Are
you kidding me? You're not alone in that.
Oh, yeah. So I'm at WordCamp Los Angeles, and I end up sitting next to this guy, Sergio, during a session on the WordPress command line interface. And super, super wonky. I don't know anything about it. But Sergio's sitting there with his laptop, and I literally just happened to sit next to this guy. And he's showing me stuff on his laptop, and he's like willing to email me all these command line tricks and stuff. And he's just really generous with sharing his knowledge. And
as are you. So you found your spirit animal.
And since WordCamps are like hyper local, so it's like almost everybody there was in the Los Angeles area. So, I'm coming from Santa Monica. Sergio was in Topanga at the time. And so we went out to lunch the following Friday, had a 3-hour long lunch. Sergio didn't realize it was a job interview till the end. And I basically offered him a job and he went, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so he was employee number 1. He's still working at NerdPress. So going from 1 person to 2 people was really, really hard because it was all up here. And so learning how to document processes and, teach him. And like, I knew every client by their name and what their kids' names were and their dogs, like, it was so personal. Yeah. And so trying to get all that out of my head and document it. And it's still hard to do, but learning how to processitize things, right? Because we're a service-based business, so scaling that is really hard, and standardizing that is hard. You mentioned also growing and growing and growing. I'm not trying to grow really fast. I know growth is like the American business. For American business, growth is like considered the metric for success, and that's not the metric I want. For us,
what's your metric?
Oh, happiness, freedom, satisfaction.
Let's talk about these core values of yours. Let's talk about you building your mission statement for the company, living that mission statement, being the leader, because the fish rots from the head. And the reason why your company culture is so amazing is because it just embodies who you are as a human being. And you very much hire people that are on board with that way of moving through the world, very generous of spirit, very kind, striving for excellence, all of these things that you do so well. How did that come about, and why is that so important to you, these core values?
So I think the company culture is so important. I can't control 24 people, right? Nor would I want to try. but
Mm.
if we have a culture that is resilient and has a shared set of common values, as long as somebody on my team is trying to live those values, I'm going to back them 100%, right? And it's clear for
Yes.
everyone. It took us a year to develop our core values.
I
It
remember
was a huge
lots of
project.
messages and
And,
emails.
and this was a few years before we tackled the mission and vision. My friend Jeff was like, you really need to do core values. And my thing is, if we're going to do something, I want to do it right. I'm not going to do something just for lip service or because everybody else does
Yes.
core values. I feel like I see core values on so many company websites on their about page, and you just get the feeling like they did that to like check off a box of, okay, we've got our core values now. And for us, it went from my team kind of jokingly said, well, what would Andrew do? That's how they like tackled the stuff.
Oh, that was a hashtag. Yeah, I'm sure it still is.
Which
What would Andrew
really
do?
flattering, but that was their decision-making process. When I was like not there, they would say, well, what would Andrew do? And to me, like, yeah, totally flattering, but that's not what I want our culture to be, right? I want to figure out what defines that. How do we get to those values? And so we just spitballed on, tons and tons and tons of things. What could that be? And we were just 5 people at the time, and we went to the WordCamp US conference in St. Louis that year, 2019, and we were in an Airbnb, and we were in the kitchen with this huge island, and the previous Airbnb guests had left a whole bunch of booze, and so we had one night where we just broke into the whiskey, and
you were lubed up for some brainstorming.
I didn't have an HR person yet, so.
So Johnny Walker was your HR person?
So we basically, like the 5 of us kind of hashed it out, narrowed it down, and eventually we got to 5 core values, and we've tweaked one of them slightly since, but that's it. And it works so well, not only to guide us internally, but it also helps with hiring. Like, we put this front and center and say, hey, this is what we're about. And when we're looking for job applicants, right, and we're hiring, we say, hey, this is us. And we mean it. It's so useful as a tool. And if I'm ever struggling with how to make a decision, like if I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to give someone the day off or whatever it is, right? It can be something totally banal. I just have to look at our core values and go, okay, take good care. That's one of our core values. You know what? That person should have the day off, or whatever the question is. Yeah.
Yeah. Share with me some other ways that it's so useful.
I think it's just this common vocabulary and sensibility. And
I like what you said about the culture being resilient.
I don't want to get to a 100-person company. I mean, maybe we will, but that's not something I'm seeking. But if we do, I want to make sure that if I'm not there, the company culture carries it forward and keeps doing that. And I don't know. I think company culture does carry through, right? Either companies that have been around for decades, and either they've been great for decades or they've been kind of terrible for decades. And, it, like you said, the fish stinks from the head, right? And culture does stick. And once it's set, it's really hard to change. I think that's the other thing.
Very true. Very true. So as a leader, very, very tied and anchored to your core mission and values that you have collectively created because you are inclusive, how do you empower your team to think about not what would Andrew do, what would we do as a team? So you are an entity.
We tell them we want them to do that, first of all. Like, we actually just say that. We talk a lot about our team culture and how we're supportive of each other. There are a lot of companies where they pit employees against each other and it's very competitive. And there is no place for that in NerdPress. We have our key performance indicators on our quarterly employee reviews are a little unconventional. We have one that actually I stole from you, Tess. It celebrates others' success.
Ooh, it's a big one. I live my life by that. I live my life by celebrating and elevating others. Thank you. I'm so thrilled to hear that. And you sent me your core values and mission as it was evolving. So I'm very much inside of what it is, and it's so wonderful. So tell us about some of the other unconventional.
I mean, it's, another core value is teach and empower. And I think part of it is the core values and the mission. We wanted to apply externally and internally. So we struggled writing the mission statement, and this was more recent. But a lot of companies have a mission statement that is there to serve the company. And when you read it, it's really just marketing. And I wanted a mission statement that would work for our clients, but also for us. So, we're all about helping people do what they love. And so for our clients, they want to do something else that they don't want to do the tech stuff. We love the tech stuff, right? So it can apply both ways. So we're freeing up our clients to do the other things that they love while we do the things we love in order to empower them to do that, right? So I think just trying to, whenever we do something, I want to do it right. And I want to make it meaningful and impactful and not lip service. I'm going back to that idea because I think that's, it's really hard, but long term, it makes things a lot easier. And
it does.
Right?
I want to talk about this quest for perfection because I know that this is something that you have struggled with in your life, and I want to do it right, and I want to do it right, and I want to do it right, and I want to be an expert, and wonderful, this drive for excellence all the time, and I can completely meet you there. But our superpower can be our Achilles heel when not held in balance. So I want to go back to this question I was asking earlier about identity, because I know that you had been firmly sort of chasing static goals. We've talked about this in our friendship, and I'm a vegetarian, I'm a lighting designer, I do everything on time, or whatever the labels might be. Can you share with us how you've been able to let go of this desperate need to strive for perfection or define yourself by labels?
Yeah.
So that we can steal some of this from you?
Thanks for calling me desperate, first of all. But
Oh my goodness. Oh, I should take that back, shouldn't I? Well, maybe I was projecting on you because my quest for perfection feels desperate.
Well, actually,
so I apologize.
You said you used the word excellence there, and I think I often have the phrase "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good," right? Which is kind of cliche,
I love
but
that. I'm stealing that from you.
I didn't make it up, so I can't claim it. But I mean, I was always. I'm not going to let go of excellence, but it doesn't have to be perfect, right? There's a difference.
Well, they're not the same
Exactly.
thing, are they?
And so,
Yes.
Yeah, growing up, I was a vegetarian. I was a lighting designer, right? And I latched onto these as key identities for myself. And when I stopped being a vegetarian, eating that bite of fish was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And it wasn't because I had to pick up a fork and put it in my mouth. Physically, it was easy, right? But emotionally, it was changing my identity where, oh, boom, I'm not a vegetarian anymore. And what does that mean? And then letting go of being the lighting designer, I'm no longer the lighting designer. And hey, I'm still here, and now.
And you're still fabulous.
And now I don't define myself as CEO. That feels weird. I don't know. I guess maybe just some of this is getting older and being more mature and having more experience where it's I don't need to label things the same way. It doesn't really matter. Whereas I think when we're younger, it's much easier to latch onto that stuff as you're figuring it out.
Well, it just feels tangible when you're younger, doesn't it? Right? Where you can going back to what we were saying earlier about fitting in, feeling like you've got to conform or fit in or belong somewhere or it just feels much more secure. At least that's been my experience. So share with us how you feel about identity now. What informs that association for you now?
It's funny. I feel like until we started talking about it, I haven't been thinking about identity in a long time.
I love that this is what you're saying. So let's dive into that because I'm really experiencing this at the moment, and I think we do in our 40s and 50s, where I am becoming less interested in the persona construction and more interested in the sense of self. And every experience is an invitation to return to self, and not in a narcissistic, self-absorbed way, but just in I want to know myself and how I want to move through the world and feel good about that. So let me rephrase that. How are you feeling about how you want to move through the world, and what are your yardsticks for just checking in with yourself about that?
Well, I feel like I've had the same goals for about 4 years that I haven't done a great job on.
Oh, tell me about
I
that.
basically have been wanting to be able to step away from NerdPress for 3 months. Or take an actual proper vacation. I actually have made progress, but we're not quite there yet. And the pandemic slowed us down, and slowed that goal down because we were so busy during the pandemic. We were very, very lucky, and
because everyone was at home on their computers starting businesses.
Yeah, and
pivoting.
recipe websites did particularly well during the pandemic.
Just exploded.
Right?
Yeah.
So
everybody was, doing their sourdough starter
Right.
and making bread.
And, had we been a company supporting travel websites, it would have been a very different story. So I can't take any credit for that. We just got lucky. I feel for everybody else who didn't. And so basically there's like 3 potential goals. One is I sell NerdPress someday. Another is I take a really long vacation. Well, I guess the last one isn't a goal, but it's a possibility, is that I'm no longer here. I get, we used to say Andrew gets hit by a bus. My team didn't like that. So now we say if Andrew gets abducted by aliens. So all 3 of those are basically the same thing though. Like, I'm not here running the company anymore. Right. And the stakes are really high now. We've got 24 families who payroll is supporting them, right? The business is supporting these people's livelihoods, and all of our clients. We've got hundreds of publishers that we're supporting, and if we just disappear, that's a problem for them. So the stakes are very high, and it should not be dependent on me. There should be nothing where I'm a bottleneck, or I'm the only one with the one password or the one login to access the thing. And what we do is touches so many different areas that it's really hard to do that. On the technical side of things, we've done a very good job. Heather is our COO, and she's wonderful. She's wonderful. And Jameson, our support team leader, and the rest of our support team,
also wonderful. Let's give a big shout out to everybody.
On the technical side and the operations side, we're actually doing a really great job. I actually, in February, we went on vacation. It was my first real vacation in 5 years, and I didn't work. I showed up in Slack one day just to say hi and say how it's going, and they chased me away.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yes.
So let's. I want to ask you about this a little bit more, because you have this amazing company culture and this extraordinary team of very capable, very committed, very proficient people. So is that a mindset shift for you to actually mindfully disconnect and trust that you have put the infrastructure in place and hired this incredible team of people that can actually continue to steer this ship if you step away for a little bit? So is that internal work for you rather than actually having to do any more work in the company at present with that particular thing you're struggling with?
I think this actually goes back to excellence. I've had to learn how to delegate because I've been kind of a control freak because I want things to be perfect.
Oh, it's hard.
So, but what I've realized recently is if I trust someone on my team to do a good job, or ideally a better job than what I could do, then I don't worry about it. There are people on my team who know things and are better at things than I am. And I can't, every time we have somebody whose skills surpass mine, I'm thrilled. There's no ego here. That's exactly what I want. I don't want to be the best person at all this stuff. I don't want to be the control freak, because we're all stronger if all of us are better at the jobs. Right. So where was I going with that? Excellence. So as long as I know someone who's going to do an excellent job, awesome. Right. And then my job is maybe to course correct a little bit as we go. So I'm still working on learning how to get out of people's way. I want to hire good people. I want to empower them to do a good job, and I need to get the hell out of their way.
Yeah. How are you working on that within yourself?
I think it just takes time, and training, and again, it comes back to trusting that they're going to do a great job.
So do you redirect yourself in the moment? Do you remind yourself?
Sometimes.
What tangible tool are you using or tool?
We document a lot of things. That's a big part of it. We use a knowledge-based tool called Guru for an internal knowledge base, and you create cards. It's like micro blog posts. It's a great tool with a great search engine, though, so it's really easy to create a little knowledge card. We have hundreds of these cards now. And so when we have a little piece of knowledge, we document it. I'm not usually the one documenting it anymore, but we know all of it's there. And what we're working on now is we have all these different tools trying to tie them all together. So it's actually where we work. So we're looking at building internal tools to work smarter, not harder. And I want everybody on the team to be able to share a brain and kind of work as one. So like Tess, when you email for support, it doesn't matter whether it's Pat or Taj or Crystal emailing you back, you're going to get an amazing answer, right? And a consistent answer.
Yes.
We don't want to be...
And very quickly, like mind-blowingly quickly. It's extraordinary. Like I said, the most exceptional customer service I've ever received with any company that I've ever worked with. And also the people that you have suggested that I go to equally do that, right? So
let's talk about that. Let's talk about collaboration. We should definitely do that.
Let's talk about collaboration, because I think it really is such a key to success. And I want to talk about success, go back to success in just a minute, but yeah, let's talk about collaboration.
So we've, over the last few years, really developed great relationships with collaborative partners. So hosting companies, theme designers, other designers, right? All these people who focus on email, stuff that's like outside our skill set or outside of our focus, where we're not competing. We have just great referrals and great recommendations. The thing that's, I think, been most pivotal in this is Slack Connect. So we're in Slack, right, our workspace, but all these other companies use Slack also. And with Slack Connect, you can have a shared channel. So we work with Big Scoots hosting. And so
amazing customer service too. Let's give a shout out to Justin and
Absolutely.
his team.
So we have a Big Scoots channel, but in their Slack, it says NerdPress, right? So we can ping them all day long, and we collaborate on behalf of our mutual clients. And we're lifting all of everybody up, right? So it's just this collaborative orbit. And then when you as a client come into this orbit, right, you're surrounded by all these people who work well together, who do a really good job, and it just runs.
And it's seamless.
And it should be seamless. Absolutely.
It feels like I'm going from my family to the extended family, and everybody shares the same kind of goals and warmth and, you know, yumminess. It's just so easy.
And
it's so
somebody
easy.
asked me once recently about my theater background and like how that relates to this. And I thought for a minute, I went, oh, collaboration. Because what are you doing as a theater designer, as a theater artist? It's a collaborative art form. I had to learn how to work with the director and the costume designer and the actors and the crew. And my theater degree wasn't really a degree in theater for me. It was a degree in collaboration.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And this idea that every experience gives us the tools for the next experience.
And you have no idea what it's going to be.
Yes, going back to what you said, just show up and you don't know what's going to happen, right? It's so amazing. I want to ask you about success. Because we all define success differently. And I think that we start to redefine it or rethink it or embrace it differently as we age and in different parts of our lives and in different situations. You always share that amazing sort of diagram example. So can you share that with everybody?
So
it's so illustrative. Right? I mean, it's so effective.
I love it. I don't know. I can't credit the artist, but there's a really cute cartoon, and it's like two panes, and on one side it says what success, what people think success is, and it's just a graph and like a straight diagonal line going up, right, with an arrow. And then the next pane is what success really looks like, and it's like squiggly line going all the way around until you finally get to the top corner. And
it's messy.
It's very messy, and you know, if you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you're only seeing that straight line. And I might look tremendously successful to somebody right now, right, who's just starting out, but they don't see the 15 years of work and trials and tribulations and sleepless nights and all of those things. Like none of that is visible, right? All you see is me in this moment.
And the course corrections and the getting lost and the freaking out and the triumphs, the sadness, the mistakes, or what words we want to use to it. But it's just an ever-changing beast of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to label me, you could call me a failed lighting designer and a failed vegetarian and a failed food blogger, right? So...
listen, you know, for me, again, we define failure differently, right? I love the definition of, for me, it's just not trying, or maybe you would say just not showing up, right? Like there is no such thing as failure in my opinion. I mean, it's just learning. Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is the Nelson Mandela thing, which I know those of you listening to every episode have heard me say a lot, but I never lose. I either win or I learn. And what a beautiful way to move through the
Yes.
world, you know? So in terms of your just NerdPress evolving, growing, expanding, learning, whatever words we want to use, you are very much in a phase where let's talk about scalability. You've been talking about this a little bit and moving more into software. Like you acquired two plugins right now.
So, who knows what's going to happen with AI? It's really scary right now. I think we're going to be fine.
Very
At
scary.
least in the next few years, I'm not too worried. But 10 years from now, and I'm bad at predicting the future. I think everybody's bad at predicting the future, but I feel that like I'm not confident trying to predict the future. But what I can do is try to take some guesses and make sure that whatever future comes, we're prepared for it, right?
Yes.
And so that's part of my job now is like trying to figure out, okay, which direction should we head, and how are we all going to stay successful? What does that look like? Right now we're basically a service-based business, and scaling service is hard. It takes a lot of work, a lot of training. When we hire a new person, it takes 6 months before they're really ready to fly on their own, because there's just so much that they have to learn. And they probably come with certain information that's not necessarily wrong, but it's not necessarily the way NerdPress does it, right? With tech, there can be 10 correct answers, and we want the standard answer over here for us. So, we acquired a plugin last December, and a plugin is a piece of software that lets you expand what WordPress does. So this particular plugin adds social sharing buttons, so you can add like pin on Pinterest or share on Facebook, that kind of stuff.
You just displayed one of your superpowers, by the way, which is Andrew helps distill complex technical things into 1 or 2 sentences that you can just understand. That's one of your superpowers. Yeah. Sorry, keep going.
It's funny. We teach like analytical reading as part of our training. It's like, okay, we just use the word plugin. Well, I'm thinking somebody listening to this probably may not know what a plugin is, right? If they don't have a WordPress site, they'll have no idea. And the point, though, is that we bought some software.
Was that scary for you?
A little bit. And I'll tell you, I would have been in way over my head had we not found Colin, or had Colin not found us. And this is another like I think serendipity may be the theme.
I love the word serendipity.
Yeah, so in October, one of my longest employees gave her notice, and she decided to move on, and that was heartbreaking. And we're all good now. We're still friends. She's actually in our collaborators channel in Slack still. But we had to open up her job. And so we did a job posting, and we ended up, one of the people who applied for her position, I immediately saw, this guy's not right for this job. Like, he's been a WordPress developer for 20 years. Like, what is going on? Like, why is he applying for this? What is he really after by applying for this job? Like, what's he looking for? And, long story short, like halfway through our interview, I'm like, hey, you're not right for this, but I got this other thing going on. And he just lit up. He was so excited. And it was literally, he was the perfect person on the planet, literally the most qualified, perfect person on the planet to come take on this software project. And
I will say though, Andrew, what I'm going to say is about serendipity. I think you're being very generous in choosing to see it that way, right? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the way I see it, if I may offer my insight, just watching from the outside, and you and I speak, often about business and about life, just as friends, that I see that another one of your superpowers is that you are able to see people's skill set, strength, and heart song desires, and you're able to empower them and give them opportunities that are going to allow them to swim and fly and move and grow in their zone of genius. And I know that you ask your team members that a lot. What would you like to be doing? What do you enjoy doing? That's another part of building a happy, harmonious team, right?
one of the things I look for when hiring is intrinsic motivation. It's if somebody said, when I say, why are you looking for this job? And they say, oh, well, I need the money. No way am I hiring them, right? Because they're not going to last. They're not going to be excited about coming to work every day. One of my favorite interview questions is, what gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning? I love hearing how people answer that question.
Yeah. Well, it tells a lot about somebody, doesn't it? About what motivates them. What motivates you?
Solving problems. and learning and being challenged. I
Yeah.
And all of those things go together. And that's why I really leaned into doing NerdPress. I was wearing lots of different hats, and I wasn't in the mid ooze. I wasn't, or I guess mid teens. I just wanted to say ooze. In 2015, 2016, I was still doing theater on the side. I was still doing that other e-commerce website. I was doing blog tutor. Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about it. I started an ad network in the middle of all of that, and so I'm wearing all these different hats and not excelling at any of them. And I wasn't really until I said, okay, what am I going to be excited about long term, and what's going to keep me excited to get out of bed in the morning? And that was the technical stuff. I felt like I'd already said what I wanted to say about healthy eating. I was just starting to kind of repeat myself, but the tech is always evolving, it's always changing, and I'm always learning something new. And that part's exciting to me, and it's going to be like that till I probably never quit. So
Yeah. It's just constantly changing. And I mean, we talk about this a lot. Our hearts are this, a similar shape, and that's why we're friends, but our brains just work so differently, and that's what makes relationship and talking to people so exciting. So what are you scared of? When you said, yeah, that was scary before, what are you scared or afraid of or worried about, or how does that work in your brain?
yeah, so I don't know if scared is the right word.
What is the right
Hmm,
word?
what do I worry about, I guess?
Yeah. Are you a worrier?
I not in like the outward sense, but I'm constantly mulling things over and trying to make the best possible decisions. Um,
And how do you
I
do
think
that?
about it a lot. I talk to my team. I talk to people. I talk it out. You know,
Yeah, you do. I love that about
I'll be
you.
texting you and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this mission statement?" And you're like, "Nope, not good enough." you know?
Oh gosh, was I like that? Well, because I know that the excellence thing was
No,
there. I'm like, well, I did I say not
no,
good
no,
enough, or
you
did I
didn't.
say, well, I kind of like that, but we're not quite there
Yes,
yet, I think
I
was the
think
phrase that I
yes, which
used, wasn't it?
translates to Tess hates it. Uh,
Oh, you know me well,
I
don't you?
do.
I didn't
No,
hate it. I didn't hate it, but because I love you so much and I know that you strive for excellence, I wanted it to be
right,
excellent and really, be
and I'm only
great.
going to ask for opinions from people who I know are going to do that. I don't want the yes man, yes sir people around me. I want people who are going to push back. Maybe not too much. Like once I make a decision after taking all the input, I want us to all do that. That's my job now.
Mm,
But I want,
mm,
like, if I'm asking someone for feedback, it's because I want their feedback. It's not because I'm looking for someone to say, "Oh yeah, that's great." You know.
yeah. I mean, we just need so many people on our team, don't we? Ashley said on the last episode, Steph Carter taught her to assemble your
Mm,
cabinet. And a variety of people that can counsel you in different ways and put up different mirrors to help you expand into the best parts of yourself. And that's that what I'm hearing is you describing a version
yeah,
of that.
yeah. I think I've really loved building a team. Um, when
Mm.
I really struggled going from freelancer to CEO, and I didn't want to be the CEO. Like I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to solve all the tech problems, and I really resisted for a couple of years. And now I've totally flipped. I'm like, I love this. I love building a team and like getting cool people in the room together and seeing what they create. You know, um, it's like, so we go to a couple of conferences every year, and we were just at the Tastemaker conference in Chicago, and we brought 13 of us from the team. And there's one point where I just look around the room, and we have this room where we help a lot of the attendees, and people are doing all these one-on-ones, and I'm just like standing in the corner like such a proud papa, and I'm just like watching everybody do their thing, and like I'm just standing there, right? I'm not doing it. They're just sharing and doing all of it, and I'm beaming when I think about it. So
What's your dream? What's your dream for
for
NerdPress
NerdPress,
as we move forward?
I think keep doing what we're doing, but ideally in a more scalable way that's less stressful. I have, you know, I, I, I used to think, oh, as we grow, we're going to be safer, we're going to be more secure, and now part of the emotional roller coaster for me has been, oh no, it's just further to fall. That's been my response because there's more pressure and more responsibility. And I feel like I'm kind of cresting that. And I think we need to just mature. And this is partly why I want to become a software company. I think this is the direction to take it, where we can scale and we can have more products, we can diversify. And ultimately we can serve our mission better. We can help more people, right?
Yeah. What's your biggest obstacle to being better,
Oh, totally
being excellent?
myself, 100% me.
Meaning, what do you mean by
I
that?
still don't let go as much as I probably sound like I'm saying today. And
So give us some tools that you use. Like, what are some tools you pull out of your toolbox to remind yourself and check in with yourself about letting go? I mean, I struggle with that too.
I've been working on like the 80-20 principle, thinking about that a lot.
What's your interpretation of the 80-20? Because everyone interprets that a little
right,
bit differently.
even though it's actual numbers.
Right.
I mean, I want to maximize the amount of gain with the least amount of work, or whatever the thing is, right? So if we have a problem, we're spending 80% of our effort and only getting 20% return. That's out of balance. And then obviously the numbers don't really matter. But a good example, earlier this week, I was working with two of my team on customer retention emails, where someone emails in and says, hey, I'm thinking of canceling, right? And we were spending a lot of time going back and forth trying to convince them to stay. And sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. And I'm like, hey, let's think about, like, what are the reasons somebody might cancel? And it's these days, everyone's like, I love you, but I can't afford it anymore. Right? That's by far the most common. Like, I love NerdPress, but traffic's down.
Which is a real
It's a real
thing.
problem.
People are struggling.
So like, okay, well, if we can give them a solution to that, like, lower the price, give them a reduced plan, they can downgrade their plan. Let's offer that and move on. Like, we don't have to spend months trying to convince them to stay. Let's streamline this process so we're not spending so much effort for very little return. Because most people at this point, like, when
they've made up their minds.
Most of the time they've made up their mind. And teaching my team how to recognize when they haven't made up their mind, so we can say, hey, but we've still got this. And then the person may come back and say, oh yeah, okay, great.
Right. And with money, people really are struggling. You're not going to magically find the money.
And so why string that along and spend a lot of effort on our side if and if we aren't able to retain or help one more person, we lose one person more than we would have otherwise, but we're saving hours and hours and hours of time. That's sort of what I'm talking about. And that's just a recent example, but trying to be excellent but not perfect. And where do you draw that line?
Well, going back to right, Ashley's better not perfect, right? From the last episode, right? Yeah, if you could bottle anything, what would it be?
If I could bottle anything? Oh, your energy would be helpful.
Oh, that's very kind. Oh my goodness. Well, let me tell you, you can draft off my energy when you're feeling, like you need some any day, right? I mean, don't we do that as human beings, right? Like, this is why we're in relationship with people and why it's so rich and rewarding, why connection is what we crave, right? Because we're not supposed to do this thing called life on our own. Right. And so what I love is, the things that I am the worst at, you're the best at. Right. So that's why I love talking to you for so many reasons. But you hold up mirrors to me to see possibilities in myself that I didn't even know were possible, or paths, where my brain doesn't immediately go there. Right. So if you want to take some of my energy, happy to share it any day of the week. Right. Anything you'd wish you'd done sooner?
Raise prices.
Tell me about that.
Actually, it's that came from another conference. It was Melissa's conference, or the Subscription Lab, right? And
okay, so Melissa, everybody, that was episode 3 of the podcast.
All my besties.
Yeah. I called in all my besties to start this podcast because you're all so amazing.
You know a bit of amazing people as well, like all these people.
I do. I'm very fortunate.
So we were, I don't need to belabor the story, but there was a point where I'm in a room full of entrepreneurs at Melissa's conference, and Melissa needed a volunteer to volunteer their pricing structure. So I'm like, and this is like very early on in the conference, so nobody's like chatty. So I'm like, okay, I'll help Melissa out. I'll stand up and volunteer.
I was in the room, by the way. I remember this. And by the way, you're never boring us with your stories.
Thank you. Yeah, so I laid out the pricing, and a bunch of people responded basically saying, I wouldn't sign up with you. You're too cheap. I wouldn't trust that you're a good service.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like, because
it was a live
I was
moment.
pricing my services based on what the competition was charging, not based on the value we were providing.
Yes. And you provide so much more than anybody else I've ever seen.
That night, I raised our prices a little bit, but a week later, I I bumped the prices like significantly, like from $39 a month to $99 a month at the time. Right, it was like terrifying, absolutely terrifying doing that. Right, because I'm like, will anybody still sign up? Right, and
Yeah.
if you look at our graph of growth, it is the classic hockey stick where it's like, and then there's an inflection point, and it changes. That's where I
Yeah.
raise prices.
People value what they pay the most for, what they pay more for. She teaches that all the time, Melissa,
Yep.
doesn't she? I really struggle with that too, Andrew. It's you're not alone in that, certainly. You know, if I could give everything away for free, I
Right.
would. You know, with my health programs and stuff, just because I believe health is a birthright, right? And I want everybody to have access to it. But we're like you, we demand excellence and provide a very personalized solutions, and it costs a lot of money to facilitate that kind of
Yeah,
service.
it
So,
does.
yeah, wow. So for somebody, I close every episode with the same thing, which is for somebody out there who's, I mean, everybody out there, we've all got a dream in our heart, right? And something we want to be doing or dreaming about, but we're scared of starting. We don't know if we've got the chops to make it happen. What would you say to them?
Be bold. Take a risk. I think it's so easy these days to reach out to somebody, and if you're genuine about it, people will respond to it and show up.
Yeah.
If you go to that conference, right? I mean, I can't understate how valuable all of those things are. And like where I am now is a result of all these little interactions that I absolutely never could have predicted any of it. Like you can't sit in your room and decide to do it. It doesn't work that way. You have to show up and run into Tess and become friends with Tess, and then end up in a car ride going to a conference, right? Like all these serendipitous moments, but you have to be there for them to happen.
Yeah, you know, let's close with a theater analogy, seeing as this is two theater animals talking to each other. You know, the golden rule of improvisation is yes and.
Yep.
You don't block anything. You say yes and you stay open to all possibilities. And really, if I'm thinking about the overall arching, warm, fuzzy ball of light and possibility that's in my heart right now from our conversation, it's just show up and you don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. So to Andrew's daddy, I say thank you
Thanks, Dad.
for raising this spectacular human and helping him believe that he could do anything. And by extension, the ripple effects of you enabling me to do what I do with your zone of genius, right? And that is really what makes the world such a thrilling, exciting place to be in, is that we all bring our gifts and skills and talents and magnificence to the world. And in communion, we do extraordinary things together. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. And you can learn more about NerdPress at nerdpress.net. For those of you that have got a website or a business, I honestly just cannot recommend Andrew and his team and their services enough. So much so that you will see me on their website. I couldn't do what I do. And not have stress about it if it wasn't for Andrew and his team. So thank you so much. I love you.
I love you
We'll
too.
talk soon.
Isn't he beautiful? So many lovely things from that conversation. Try everything. Find what you love to do and give yourself permission to find where you belong. Isn't it lovely that he had a father that modeled that and encouraged that in him? I loved what he was talking about, the intrinsic motivation. What gets you excited to get out of bed in the morning? That we are the sum of our days. The idea is one thing, but you have to love the day to day. If you don't love that, then you're going to be miserable. And just showing up, you know, you can't decide that in a vacuum. You've got to get out there in the world. You don't know what's going to happen, but it could be amazing. So go and meet people in person. I mean, look at what happened to him by doing that. And the value of collaboration. Don't ask, don't get. That it's so easy to reach out for help and that we all bring our gifts and do extraordinary things together. Decide that you're going to be the solution. How can you contribute and have impact? I love his metrics for success, that he gives himself permission to work from his core values in order to find his own definition. And that success is messy. When he was talking about those diagrams, that if you're constantly comparing yourself to others, you're only seeing that straight line, not getting inside the messiness of everything that it took for that person to get there. And that it's the same for you, and allowing it to be messy and celebrating that and all of the lessons along the way. And that We're striving for excellence, not perfection. And that you can't predict the future, but you can take steps to be prepared, or as prepared as you can be. And the value of building your team, whether you run a company or not, building your team and having really good people around you that are going to tell you the truth. They're going to want the best for you. They're going to support you and hold up mirrors that help you expand into the best parts of yourself. And being bold and just taking a risk. You can always clean it up no matter what happens. And it may be bigger and better and more amazing than you ever possibly imagined. So just put yourself out there. And again, if you do have a website or a business, I honestly cannot recommend him more highly. I literally could not do what I do without him and his team. They really are that incredible. So you can learn more about Andrew and his team at nerdpress.net.
I want to hear about your It Has to Be Me story. So head on over to ithastobeme.com/stories to share it in our free community. You can also join the conversations we're having about this episode and others. I'm Tess Masters. Join me next week and we'll dive inside another great story to help us go from dreaming to doing.